Hello and welcome to Enlightened Empaths, your community for the spiritually awakened, where we discuss, explore, and connect with fellow empaths, healers, intuitives, and seekers. Empaths, we're so happy to have you join us once again this week. We have a very, very special guest. I don't even know how to introduce her. Let's see if listeners can guess. This was my tarot teacher back in 2006. And this has been my friend since 2006, and we've been working together on podcasting stuff since 2010. You guessed it, it's my friend and co-host from my other podcast, Psychic Teachers, Deb Bowen. We're so happy to have you, Deb.
This is so much fun, and I'm so honored to be here. Thank you both.
Welcome. We're excited.
Okay, so we wanted to have you on the show to talk about a lot of things with your experiences, but also mainly to focus on your new book, Crafting the Wheel of the Year, which just came out at the end of September.
What I love about this book is that the Wheel of the Year is so poignant right now with moving from one stage to the next. And it's so important that we all can tap into that in whatever way that we can. And the fact that you've tied this so beautifully in with creativity, which we all know is a main source of intuition as well. Do you feel like you were divinely inspired to come up with the words that match these beautiful illustrations and projects?
I asked to be guided. I certainly did. Let me just tell you a little history of the book. Some years ago, I guess during COVID, a woman whose name is Claire Gelder, who is in England, started taking my classes, whatever classes I taught, tarot, other metaphysical topics. She was always there. And I liked her from what I knew about her, on the Zoom call. And she sent me an email and she said, would you be interested in co-authoring a book with me? And my initial thought was, well, I don't know you. I don't know anything about you. I don't know what kind of book you want to write. But we began a dialogue. And I learned that she is owner of a gigantic corporation in England called Wool Couture Company. In America, there's this TV show about sharks or something.
Shark Tank.
Okay. Well, in England, I think over there it's called Dragon's Den, but it's the same thing. And she won it. So she's got these amazing sponsors and this amazing team in this corporation, and she sells craft supplies and craft kits.
If you love crocheting or knitting or cross-stitching or embroidery work, you can get the whole kit. And it's like really, really good quality wool and yarn, and it all comes sent right to your home. I love it. It's a really cool website.
It's a great website and great products, and she is a wonderful human being. She really is. And so she said, how about if we merge her craft ideas with a description, a history, a discussion of lore and culture of the ancient Celtic Wheel of the Year. And I said, oh, what fun that will be. So when we were planning the idea initially, I wrote a prayer, a spell, basically, for our work together and how it would go and what we would do with it. And then each of us created an altar that asked for the guidance and the blessing and the communication and all those wonderful things between us. And she had published 7 other books with Search Press in UK. So we wrote a proposal to her team and they said, yes, let's try it. And so we did. And what began to happen was that as I began to write those ideas of what would be the most fun and appropriate corresponding craft project would go with that holiday. And then sometimes she'd change it up. And we really worked together on coordinating those 2 pieces of the books. But basically, she wrote the craft part. I wrote the history and culture and ritual part.
And what I really appreciate about your book, Deb, is you walk the walk. Like, I can vouch for you that you celebrate each and every one of these holidays. I've seen you through the years. And I think that's just a beautiful thing. So I'd love for you to talk to people about how you incorporate those celebrations into your daily life.
Happy to do that, Samantha. We tend to, in Western culture, think of 4 seasons, right? Winter, spring, summer, and fall. In agrarian cultures around the world, not just in the Celtic cultures, although that was the focus of our work, there are really 8. And the 4 holidays that we think of as changing of the seasons are solar holidays. They're connected literally to the science of how the sun and the earth move around each other. In the agrarian cultures, those other 4 holidays are what we call cross-culture days. There are the 4 solar holidays, and between those, there are 4 what we call cross-quarter days. So, for example, we have just celebrated the autumnal equinox, somewhere around September 21st, 23rd, thereabouts, depending on the exact position of the planet. So we just celebrated that, and we have moved into autumn. About 6 weeks from now, we will be halfway between autumn and winter, right? Yule. And that halfway point is a holiday in the Celtic culture called Samhain. It's October 31st. Well, of course, here in our culture, that's become known as Halloween. But in agrarian cultures, it's the final harvest celebration. It's the end of the growing season. It's time to reap everything, to do the canning and the preserving and the storing up for winter. So we see these holidays rotate one after another. As we talked about, we just had autumnal equinox here in September, then Samhain in October, Yule in December, Imbolc in February. In the Catholic tradition, that is called Candlemas. And then Ostara in spring equinox. And then Beltane in May. And then Litha in June, which is the summer solstice. And then Lunasa, which is another harvest festival in August. Mabon, again, for this holiday in September. So we have 8 holidays. And they follow in this logical and lovely and scientific order, but they also give us a cultural and a spiritual context in which to help us connect to the seasons and to each other and the world around us. And as Denise pointed out a few minutes ago, I can't think of anything more important than being connected to Mother Earth at this point in our lives.
I think we all need it desperately. And you're so articulate about this topic, and you can tell that you're very passionate about it. That comes through with everything that you're saying. If you don't have a strong background in this, because I think sometimes people will look at Wheel of the Year and feel it has more religious connotations, or you have to have an everyday practice. Could you apply what's in this book on a personal level, even if that's not your practice that you do on a regular basis?
Absolutely, you can. Go outside and put your hand on a tree trunk, and you are connected to the Wheel of the Year. Just to say hello and thank you to that tree. You have shifted your connection to universal energy. It's a wonderful thing to do. And some of the exercises and crafts that Claire has suggested in the book are very simple and family-friendly, and some of them will be familiar to folks. The egg dyeing craft that she has for spring, I bet everybody I know has done that at some point along the way. She suggests some natural dyes to work with that, and a great thing to put the kids around the kitchen table and do. And so it's not as foreign or weird or woo-woo from American culture as you might think. Go out and pick up some sticks. Literally pick up some sticks and bundle them together, and you've got a wand.
Or make a Bridget's cross. I love the craft she has in there on making the poppet, the dream doll. And she talks about how you can put anything in there, like herbs or scents or crystals, and then add your wish or a question you want answered in your dreams and tuck it under your pillow. I'm definitely going to do that one.
Oh, that'll be fun. And she's created that poppet in the shape of that ancient shape of the goddess, which is really lovely. And we've seen it 1,000 times in pictures and museums and whatnot.
What I love about this is you could be at the beginning of your journey with exploring the Wheel of the Year, or you could be an adept practitioner with following this as part of your everyday life. And this book would really be useful, helpful, and enjoyable either way. Because we are at this change of seasons, and I would love if you want to talk more about the connection with the earth energy, because what I found is I walk every day out in nature. And I avoid humans at all costs. And I was down in the field the other day, and I'm not exaggerating, there were 30 deer down there. And I'm just standing there by like a fool waving, like, hi, how are you? And I thought, Denise, you are a loon. But I've caught myself, like when I'm walking alone, like talking to everybody, like I'll pick up a rock and say, well, hello, aren't you a beautiful little stone? And I realize I'm either needing the med cart or I'm just becoming that much more connected. But I think if we can normalize this, it's going to really help.
Oh, absolutely, Denise. Thank you for that. I live in a little cottage on a barrier island, and my cottage is nestled in the maritime forest. And so in the yard in which I share space with the tree people, we have this wonderful relationship. And I am very grateful to them. And every morning I go out and I say thank you to all of the tree people around me. I never use the word animal. I speak about the four-legged, two-legged, winged, swimming, crawling people. For example, my Lakota friends have taught me that there's no word in their language for animal. It doesn't exist. They speak of the buffalo nation and the ant nation, right? So when you begin to think in terms of that deep connection among us all and the synergy that is the whole planet, you do begin to have a different relationship. On my street, we have one thicket left that has not been developed, and there are rabbits who live in that thicket. And every day when I go past that thicket, whether I see the bunnies or not, I speak to them. I roll the window down and I say, "Hi, how are y'all doing in there?"
Deb, do you remember our friend Jamila telling that story about how they had bought the house in the mountains and it was infested with bees? And so they were told to bring out a guy who would get rid of the bees in a not very nice way. And she told us that she went up into the attic and spoke to the bees, and the next day they had rehomed themselves.
Do you know the story do you know the tradition? It's called telling the bees.
What popped into my head is they made sure to go and tell the bees that the queen had died, that it goes back way, way, way back hundreds and hundreds of years, that the bees are such an integral part of everything that we need to survive, that you have to honor them. When you think about it, they are these amazing creatures, what they bring to our world.
You have to tell the bees. So when somebody dies, you tell the bees.
Yeah.
And it's about that continuity of life and how you connect. It's a lovely thing. One of the things that I most hope that folks take away from this book, regardless of your particular belief system, the connection to nature transcends that in my mind. And I hope that folks will realize that there is a need for all of us to have that daily awareness of our connection to the changing of the seasons and the beings around us, and a respect for those beings. And I'm not just talking about four-legged folks here. I'm talking about trees and everybody. And that one of the ways that we can so honor that connection is by doing the crafts that Claire has given us in the book, for example. That's a way of doing that.
It keeps us in touch with our spirituality, but also our humanity in these stressful, anxious times.
I was thinking about you and all the processing and thinking and praying that I know that you have done for many years while you have had needles in your hand.
Oh, yeah. It's so meditative, to do any type of creative work, but especially a craft, because at the end of it, not only have you had this time of connecting with this piece that you're crafting, right? But it also helps calm the monkey mind. It helps you focus on one thing at a time. And then when you're done, you have a beautiful project. And I'm not the only crafter here. Denise is a wonderful crocheter. She made me the most beautiful shawl when my dad was ill.
Wow, nice.
You know what we're talking about, right, Denise?
I do. And when you were speaking, I was thinking about how, and Deb, I'm sure when you use a drum beat or you use any kind of rhythm to put you into an altered state of consciousness, to be more aware of what's around us, we all are familiar with that. But I think that meditation that comes with a repetitive motion of crafting, of knitting, of putting all your intention into something is so vital, especially when we're being bombarded all the time with screens and media and all the other things that are trying to distract us. But do you feel, I'm going to jump a little bit, because everything you're talking about resonates with me on the shamanic practices that I've done. And to me, it's all a level of knowledge that we all have access to, and it's not appropriating from any specific culture. But do you feel that there's a correlation between the information and the activities and the crafts in the book with other ways we can connect with the natural world? I hope that came out right.
I think I got you, Denise.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know that there's a line, I guess is where I want to go here in a minute. There's a line between cultural appropriation and between actual practices that are common to us all. When we talk about a drum beat, for example, we think about particular indigenous cultures and the beating of a drum. And yet, every culture has something that they make rhythm with, and that's okay. For example, many years ago, Mickey Hart, who is one of the two drummers of the Grateful Dead, Mickey Hart put together this collaboration of drummers from around the world, people from India, people from various African countries, and people from South America and Australia, all these differing drummers playing different kinds of drums. And he put all of this together, and the result of that were 2 books and several CDs, of course. One of the books is Drumming at the Edge of Magic. The other is Planet Drum. And the CDs about these guys playing all these different instruments. And they come together in this beautiful, beautiful way. And I think it's in Planet Drum, I may be wrong about this, where he writes about that it takes 7 seconds for a group of people to find a rhythm and come together.
Wow, that fast.
That fast. I love that we can find common ground among us. Is that an answer to your question?
It's perfect because it accentuates the commonality that we all share, that we all feel. We're all just part of it. We're not separate from it. And people seem to forget we're just another species on the planet. And the fact that we have that ability to interconnect through rhythm, through that connection, it's amazing to me.
Exactly. And if you take the notion that if you can do that with drumming from different cultures in 7 seconds, can we not do that as we find that common ground of paying attention to nature around us, for example, and each other? And back to the language of all of this, if we try not to think in a hierarchical way with humans at the top of that hierarchy, but rather that we all live in the great gift-giving circle, and we're all an integral part of that circle with nobody more important than another. If you think you're an important person, and I use that word in quotes on this planet, try spending the night in a tent with a mosquito. The Dalai Lama, I think, is who said that originally, not me. So when we can see the world in a different lens.
Well, Deb, something I really love and respect about you, as I said, you do walk your walk and you do actually celebrate all of these holidays that you write about in this book. But you've also spent a lifetime exploring other cultures, other religions to, again, find that commonality and all. Would you be willing to talk a little bit about your experience with the Lakotas?
There's not a lot I can really say because there are things that I've been taught that I can't share, but I will tell you that some of the greatest lessons I've learned in my life, I learned from my Lakota teachers and from just being on the reservation. It's a different world to drive through South Dakota. I mean, it's a different world completely from what I know.
How many years did you go out there?
Every year for 14 years. And of those 14 years, I took students into the spring. And of those 7 years, I went in the summer by myself.
Wow.
So 2 trips a year sometimes. But they were great experiences. My students, certainly, their lives are changed in tremendous ways. In fact, in the Lakota language, the word for connection is the sentence is matakiasi. But I got a Facebook message the other day from a former student who said, I finally did it. And there was a photograph attached to the message, and it was a picture of the words matakiasi in my handwriting on her arm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's really sweet. What I've talked about really about the connection and the non-hierarchical thinking among us all comes from my Lakota teachers.
Yeah, yeah. And I just think it's great that you were able to learn from them and learn from different religions. Even as a kid, you were raised Protestant, but you would spend a lot of your time with the priest at St. Teresa's.
Oh, I loved Father Donahue. What a kind and wonderful man he was. And today, no priest in his right mind would do what Father Donahue did for me. Well, I would ride my bicycle down. I grew up in a Presbyterian church. And back in those days, none of the churches on the island were ever locked. So I would ride my bicycle down to St. and park my bike and go in and sit in the sanctuary. Because the sanctuary at St. Teresa's was way cool. It had all this stuff in it, as opposed to my very staid little Presbyterian sanctuary with just the one cross on the altar. But there were all these statues and people. It smelled so good, and the candle, it was just great. And Father Donahue would come and sit and explain to me what I was seeing. And so I learned about saints, and I learned about their perspective on Mary, Mother Mary, and the Stations of the Cross and why all that stuff, I just loved my time with Father Donahue. And he gave me, I think it was the year I was 10, he gave me 2 rosaries, one for me and one for my mother, who had an eye disease. And the rosary he gave me is made of amethyst beads. The one for Mama was from olive wood. And I still have both of those rosaries. Love them. I'm very grateful for them.
I just love that you've always been open to exploring other faiths. I think that says a lot about you.
Well, you hear this, I've told this story before. When I was a teenager and madly in love with George Harrison, I wanted to go to India because they had gone to India. The Beatles had gone to India, right? And so I told my father that I wanted to be a Buddhist. I didn't know the difference between Buddhism and Hinduism at that point, but I knew I wanted to be cool Indian stuff somehow. And my father, to his sweet credit, said, then you just be the best Buddhist you can be. And that
beautiful response, because your parents were super religious.
Absolutely, they were. And I think he probably knew at some level that I wasn't going to go off and be a Buddhist, really. But it gave me some kind of permission to continue an exploration of world beliefs and cultures. And I just think that's just fascinating.
Yeah.
The 2 most important words I believe we can say as we open ourselves up to different ways of thinking are teach me. I remember after 9/11, I knew very little about the Islamic faith. And on that morning of 9/11, I stopped at the Barnes & Noble in our town and bought a Quran. Went home and read the Quran. And I called the only person I knew who was a member of the mosque. I called this woman and I said, can I and a friend of mine come to service on Friday? And she said, absolutely, you'd be more than welcome. Here are the rules. No shoes, cover your head, whatever. And so my lovely friend Etta and I went and took their Friday ceremony with this group of women. And we, of course, were separated in a different room with a speaker. And it was all in languages I didn't understand, of course. But we participated as best we could. And when it was over, we were on the floor. We sat on the floor. And they sat in a circle. They had made food to serve us for lunch, which I thought was really lovely of them. So we shared a meal, and we were allowed to ask all the questions we wanted. They were so kind and welcoming and really grateful that we had come and wanted to learn. I think that when we can do that, we really do get back to that notion of connectedness, don't we?
We sure do.
The beauty of that is, and this is just in my heart that I believe this, if you go back to the original tenets of any religions or belief systems, they're basically saying the same thing. Be kind, do the right thing, love with your heart. It's not to denigrate or come from a place of fear for another religion just because of what their belief system, it just doesn't make any sense to me.
No, it doesn't to me either. And where we live, Denise, I really drive down the highway and pray for the trees because it's just clear cut, build, 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 build. And my heart just breaks. And so I write about that in my creative nonfiction work is all about environmental work. I write about the decimation of the trees in the maritime forest, an experience I had with a coyote one night. I write about the folks who, there's nowhere to go. What are you going to do? So people are screaming about bear. We have bear where we live. And you would not believe that, thinking in that, but there are bear around. And people holler about, oh, the bear in their yard. Well, no, you're in their yard. It's like the deer you were talking about earlier that you see. Absolutely say hello to them. Say thank you. Wish them well.
But even here in this rural part of the state where I live, because they've had a lot of building, it's displaced the deer population. So they're all in town. It's just different. It's very different. And my new obsession is dark dark sky places and how I can get to different dark sky places, because I think that's a real connection with spirit and divine, to be where there's no light pollution, there's no noise pollution. And that's becoming more and more rare and precious. I agree with you 100%, Deb. Anything we can do to protect it, to me, it's the same as taking care of little kids and old people. I do refer to them as animals, but any living being that doesn't have a voice of their own to protect themselves, if we should be looking out for them.
Absolutely. We should. I live on an island where sea turtles come up and nest. And one of the things that we try really very hard to do, even the real estate companies that rent the houses, try to explain to folks who come here why you don't have light shining out over the ocean in the summertime, why that's not a good idea. And Hurricane Erin that just drifted by us a couple of weeks ago, even though that storm did not hit us, we had tremendous waves and overwash from that storm, and most of the turtle nests were decimated in that storm. I'm not sure how many we're going to have this year.
Tell us about your experience with the coyote, because now I think listeners are curious.
So another ritual that I have, in addition to going out in the morning and speaking to the trees and the people out there, is I go out at night on the deck and say goodnight. And I went out on my deck one night. It was in the winter. It was cold. And something was moving. I live on a gravel road. And something was moving on the road between me and the house across the way. And so I just stopped. It was a coyote. And I don't know why I think this coyote was female, but I do. And so I think of her as she. She stopped. And she turned her head and looked at me. And I looked at her. And I spoke and told her I hope she had a nice night. We had this moment of eye contact for, I don't know how long it was, not very long. And then she sauntered on off. Well, my neighbor has a little teeny tiny white dog. And so the next morning she was out in her yard with the dog. And I went over and I said, don't let your dog run loose. There was a coyote that came through on the street last night. She sent out a text to the neighborhood about that. And someone on the street, I probably shouldn't say on air exactly what the text said, but it was basically, I'll be on my porch with a rifle tonight. The next night, I'm back on the deck at about the same time, thinking the coyote might come by again. And I'm on my deck praying that the coyote doesn't come back, because I knew, I could hear that person really was on their porch with a gun. I assumed they had a gun, I don't know, but I could hear them on the porch. And that just broke my heart. So I prayed that coyote never came down my street again. And to my knowledge, I've never seen it again. So I'm grateful for that. Oh, isn't it terrible to be grateful not to see somebody?
Yeah, that's the dichotomy we're living in right now. And that's why getting back to nature and getting back to center and reading books like Crafting the Wheel of the Year and really just setting our own compass back to center is all we can do right now. Well, that's not true. Tell people what you did this weekend, because there are beautiful action steps we can take, like the one you did on Saturday.
Oh, this is wonderful, y'all. So I have this friend who is a truly amazing young woman. Her name is Anna Mann, and Anna has a way of gathering people in this beautiful way. And she has for some years been a producer of coordinating musicians at various venues for community events. And last year, she created an organization called the Wilmington Peace Festival. And the intent of the festival is that a year or so from now, we will have in our community a large-scale peace festival event with some fairly big-name folks. I have to tell you that our real goal is to have Joan Baez come. But there's that. So I am on the advisory board of this organization. And we had our first community building fundraising event this past weekend at a local brewery. And we had musicians who came who sang only peace songs. There's a ukulele group in your town, Samantha, called the Ukaholics. They're so precious. They sang I Long for Peace, which is such a beautiful song. So musicians who sang about peace, some speakers, community speakers from various perspectives. And my job was, I and another writer put together what we called the Poetry for Peace table. We had a table where people could come write poems. We had a big canvas where folks could write peace things on the canvas and whatnot. We had so much fun. My guess is there were somewhere between 200 and 300 people there. But it was a lovely event. So even here, there's this notion of connected and that we really can make a difference for a peaceful and connected world. Crafting does that for folks too with this wonderful book that Claire and I have written together. I'm so thrilled about that.
It's all so beautiful, Deb. And when you were speaking about the book earlier, I was thinking if there's one thing in there that you love to make and it really resonates with you, you could put intention and gift those to other people. This sounds like it's a book you'll keep coming back to, and it doesn't have to be sequential. You can pick and choose. You may have one holiday that really resonates with you and another that's like, this one not so much. But you could follow the whole pattern of the Wheel of the Year with each project, or you could just pick and choose.
Absolutely, you can. There are no rules. That's the cool thing about it. There's just no rules. Absolutely. You know, if you want to knit pumpkins instead of in October, you want to do them in April, go right ahead.
What you just spoke about with the peace work, with this book, with your connection with the natural world, Samantha's spot on. You're living the life that you're true to, and that's a beautiful gift. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Denise. It's been a real joy and a real privilege to work on this project with Claire. It was wonderful to try to synthesize the intent of each holiday and how it really can just be an integral part of our lives.
And help you to slow down and really just focus on what's important. I remember the first holiday I celebrated with you was the winter solstice. And my 3 girls were really young at the time. So, you know, I'm running from Christmas play at this school thing to Christmas Eve children's mass to wrapping presents to moving the damn elf on the shelf every night. And that's, you know, I'm just hectic and moving and going and producing Christmas for Santa Claus, who still gets all the credit, which irks me. And then I go to your house with Joel and you had the spiral. Well, do you want to tell how you celebrated with the lights?
I so remember that evening with you, Samantha. I had cleared the coffee table in my den, and I had tea lights in the shape of a spiral on the coffee table. That's all that was on the table. And the house was dark. We started in absolute darkness. And I lit one candle on my altar. And Samantha and Joel and I sat and we just kind of talked by this candlelight, this one candle. And as we progressed through the evening, we started to light each candle in the spiral until that was glowing. And then I plugged in the Christmas tree, which, by the way, is made from a recycled crab pot.
It's the coolest tree.
I plugged in the tree and the candles on the mantle. Eventually, the house was a blaze of lights. And that signified for us that the longest night of the year, the darkness of the winter solstice and of Yule, and then the coming of the light, and reminding us all that we are the light. And the more we share it and spread it, the better it is.
Yeah. It was just so significant to me because, you know, my energy back then, and maybe still now, is a little bit like a bull in a china shop because I'm always going and doing and in 1,000 directions. And that day, I remember I'd been to like 8 stores to find freaking matching tights for my girls' dresses they needed for the school children's Christmas play they were in. And at our church, our mass was so crowded that they had to have the Knights of Columbus out, like basically as valet. It was just chaotic and busy and overwhelming. You know, it were to the point where I don't even think I listened to the homily. It was just get through, check it off, check it off, check it off. And then I go to your house and I just exhaled and I breathed and I looked in your eyes and I looked in Joel's eyes and I talked to you and I looked at the light and I contemplated and I just thought, this is such a beautiful thing. Just the glaring difference always stood out to me. And you guys still do that every year, even though Joel no longer lives in our area. You guys do it remotely, which I think is beautiful.
We do, indeed. Absolutely, we do.
Okay, so people can find the book anywhere that books are sold. But tell people about bookshop.org, because that's a wonderful way to support independent booksellers.
Yes, you can order the book from any online retailer thing, you know, Amazon or Target or Waterstone if you're in another country or whatever. But You can also order from an online thing called bookshop.org. And when you order from Bookshop, a portion of the proceeds from the sale of the book goes to a local bookstore. And I, as the author, could designate what local bookstore that is. And the bookstore that I designated is Pomegranate Books in Wilmington, North Carolina. So you will help my wonderful friend Kathleen and a lot of other local bookstores if you buy from bookshop.org. And you can ask your local retailers to carry the book.
Fantastic. This has been so much fun, Deb. Thank you so much for coming on our show.
Thank you, Samantha and Denise. It is so much fun to be with you.
You're amazing. You're absolutely amazing. And I think your book is going to help so many people because it does feel like it's a work of service. It feels like it's from your heart, but it's also to help bring people back to themselves. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And certainly a huge thank you to Claire for wanting me to do this with her and the work that she has done. She's an amazing gal, y'all. I'm grateful for.
It was so fun having her on our show and getting to hear her story and just how she just took this idea and went with it. And really, as she explained it, crafting for her was a way to overcome her inner anxiety.
She talks about that a lot.
Yeah, which I think is just such a great reminder that we all need to do something, take some type of action to feel as though we're contributing to the light, as we always say on both of these shows.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Deb. We'll put all the links to her website in the show notes so you can find out how to connect more with Deb and her work. In the meantime, we hope you have a beautiful, wonderful week out in nature and filled with your own inner connections. Remember, as always, to show up, do good work, and share your light. Take care.